For my first mini exam video, I have decided to do a family pedigree on the Griswold family from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and identifying the trait believing in the spirit of Christmas. To start out this video, I'm going to give a brief overview of the modes of inheritance that we discuss. On top, we have X-linked dominant and recessive, which means they are passed on the gametes. For dominant, it requires that the male have the dominant genotype on his singular X and the female possess it on one or both of her X's. For recessive, it requires that the male show the recessive genotype on his singular X and that the female show the recessive genotype on both of her X's to express the phenotype. Here we have autosomal, recessive, and dominant, meaning these are on the regular body cells and not the gametes. For dominant, it requires that one or both of the alleles show the dominant genotype, and for recessive, it requires that both show the recessive genotype so that the correct phenotypes are shown. Here we see a Y-linked trait where the allele is only expressed on the male's Y chromosome, meaning it is only displayed and passed on males. When first assuming that believing in the spirit of Christmas is an X-linked dominant trait, we look at Eddie and Catherine Smith. Eddie is showing the phenotype, meaning he would have to have at least one dominant allele, which would have to be on his one X. Catherine is not showing the phenotype, so she has two recessive A's on both of her X's. Then, when looking at their kids, we see that Rocky is showing the phenotype, however would have to get a recessive A from his mother and an X from his father, making this inconsistent, as well as with seeing Ruby Sue, who would have to get one dominant X from her father and a recessive A from her mother, which would also mean she would show the phenotype, making this not consistent. Next, we'll assume that believing in the spirit of Christmas is an autosomal dominant trait. So we'll look at Art Smith and Frances Smith, who both do not show the phenotype, meaning they have two recessive A's. Then looking at their kids, this would work for Ellen, as she would get two recessive A's from her parents and not show the phenotype. But for Eddie, this is inconsistent, as he does show the phenotype, meaning he needs at least one dominant A. So this is also not consistent. Thirdly, we'll assume that the trait is Y-linked. Now, when looking at the pedigree, we can quickly see that this is not consistent, as a Y-linked trait would only be shown as a phenotype on males, and as we can see, females possess it too. So this is also not consistent. When assuming believing in Christmas is an X-linked recessive trait, we can look at the pedigree and see that when completely filled out, it is possible that all phenotypes and genotypes are satisfied, making an X-linked recessive trait consistent and possible for this family pedigree. When testing believing in the spirit of Christmas to be an autosomal recessive trait, whenever the family pedigree is completely filled out, we can see that it does satisfy at all positions, so it is in addition consistent and possible. I hope you enjoyed this pedigree breakdown. Thanks for watching!